on the Wednesday. Yeah, on the Wednesday after the ULEZ, when it went live. And when I was down there, Nigel Farage made an appearance. Apparently, that's what he likes to do. And he was very, very complimentary of what I'd done, and was kind of very in awe of the fact that one man has stood up to the big TFL machine.
Yeah, and just to give the context to those people that may not have seen our first interview, which we will leave the links to on this video, this is a situation where you basically took on Transport for London. They had fined you £11,500, and the ruling was that the signs were unlawful. The signs that were meant to tell you that you were going to get fined weren't really fit for purpose, and they were ruled unlawful. Is that fair enough to say? But you are still chasing that 11.5K from TFL. They haven't paid you back yet.
No, it's not 11.5K. So I was fined 11.5K.
Yeah.
So the money that I'm chasing back is from the auto pay system, which with all of my costs is approximately now about £4,000.
Okay.
But TFL, in their wisdom, now have got their lawyers to defend it, even though there's already a court order to say that the money has to be paid back.
Right, and that's the rub right now. That's the hub of this argument, is that despite the court ruling, they have ignored that completely, and they're still hounding you and other people for money.
Absolutely. The thing is as well, which is quite painful to say, is that Transport for London should be setting an example. When they come after you with a court order, they expect you to comply with that court order. Why are the roles not being reversed? They're supposed to set an example. Government should be setting an example. Transport for London should be setting an example. At the end of the day, if the British people all of a sudden said, we're not going to comply with these court orders, any court order that comes out, we've got anarchy in the justice system, right or wrong.
Eventually, that's what will happen, correct? And in a previous interview, we spoke about what happened to Birmingham City Council. They had 60,000 motorists who were fined because their vehicles weren't compliant with the ULEZ regulations. They had to kick those fines out, and they lost about £6 million. Subsequently, as it turned out, they were at £360 million in debt. So it really wouldn't have touched the sides. But I think what people are seeing now is that there is no fairness, and there's very little justice to be had for people like yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the fact now that Birmingham Council has gone bust, they've declared themselves bankrupt, really is a demonstration and clearly illustrates the way that money is just being squandered here in the United Kingdom. And us, the taxpayers, are just consistently expected to just keep bailing all of these organisations out of, pick up the bill for it. It's absolutely, it's just unconstitutional. All the people that I speak to, on the doorsteps, I've campaigned in local elections, 2 local elections, when I get out and I speak to people, they just say we're just cash cows. And that's how everybody's feeling. The anger that people, Marcus, the anger that people have at the moment, against the establishment, because they're just not carrying out the will of the British people. The Conservatives were voted in on a manifesto. I've always voted Conservative my whole life. I'd never vote for them, even apart from the fact that, I'm Reform now, but I would never vote for a Conservative government. For me, there's no difference now between them and Labour. So we have actually 2-tier political system of socialism now.
Indeed. And no one can even argue that case, because we have an economic situation in this country where, as far as corporation tax and income tax are concerned, it's the highest in 70 years. These are breaking new records that Jeremy Corbyn, the old Labour leader, would be very proud of. We have open border, mass unfettered immigration, which was a huge part of the reason why people voted for Brexit, I would say, no, is because they wanted immigration dealt with and controlled. But when you're out in the doorstep, do you hear this sort of thing from the people in your area?
They're just very angry. They're very angry at the fact that the British taxpayer gets no value for money. You can't see a doctor. I mean, the NHS is completely broken. That's unacceptable. We've got potholes virtually on every road that you drive down now. I mean, you look at our roads, the condition of our roads, the surrounding areas when you're driving along, the whole country is unkept, but we're paying the highest taxes. So we expect nobody minds paying high rates of tax if you're getting the service. But the bottom line is that we're not getting that service now, Marcus.
Yeah.
We are beginning to look like a third world country now. It's like I say, when you're driving down the road, everything's just on things that, for me, it's just complete government wastage, whether that's local government or whether that's mainstream government.
Indeed. And I think your case, a lot of people will look at, it's great having people from a business background like Ben Habib, Richard Tice, Nigel Farage. It's fantastic to have those guys on board, but you come from a business background yourself. You also have a small to medium-sized enterprise, but the story that people are latching onto, Noel, is the one of David and Goliath that I've mentioned before, where a small operator can actually take on Transport for London, a massive organisation, a complete megalith that people would be scared of tackling. But I think thanks to your story, a lot of people are going to challenge them and get justice served.
Well, I think we're just so desensitized, to everything that's going on now. And do you know what? The point, that we want to make here at Reform, it's okay to say no. And it is okay to say no. And I don't know when, we've accepted it in our society that we are just consistently bullied, and it's one of the things that I thought long and hard about before I got into politics. When a letter comes through the door from the council and, you're not even given the opportunity to pay it. And it says, if you do not pay, we're going to do this. And it's like, this is no way to talk to people. We're all human beings. We all have emotions. The way that we're just consistently being bullied. And with TfL, I just felt it was just another big bully. And sometimes you have to stand up to a bully. And that's what I did.
Yeah, that's what you have to do. And I think the Reform Party will give people a lot of confidence, because not only are they a political party, but they are campaigners as well. They're constantly fighting and exposing not just the corruption in this country, but they're also exposing the fact that there are solutions to these problems. Because if all you hear is bad news, you give up hope and you won't even bother going to the election. I was speaking to Howard Cox, the Reform Party London mayoral candidate for the election in May next year. And we spoke about the 42% turnout, at the elections. And we're going to say people really have to get off their backside and go to the polling station and vote. I mean, you've obviously got to back that and support that, haven't you?
Absolutely. I mean, it was dismal in the last local elections. Hardly anybody came out and voted. And that pains me. And the thing is, the point that we need to get across to the British public is there's no point moaning about things. You have to get out there and you have to vote for the party that you want in office. And that's what you have to do. Yes, there are arguments regarding, the political system that we have in this country, first past the post and proportional representation, but that's not going to get fixed overnight.
Very true. And I think when you look at the Conservative Party and you see how close Nigel is with Ian Duncan Smith, John Redwood, Jacob Rees-Mogg, many others he's very close with, and you think to yourself, well, what has to happen before these people will do what Mr Reckless did many years ago when he went over into UKIP? And I think from the next general election, the Reform Party in particular must be looking at 5 to half a dozen at least MPs. Would that be fair to say?
I would. Do you know what?
Yeah.
That would be absolutely fantastic.
Mm.
You know, if we could get some members of parliament, and that's
Sure.
what the British people need to think. You know, if they want their voices heard, and we're showing the British people, we're not all just talk and waffle. We're actually showing the British people, because we're out there consistently on the doorsteps. We're exposing this corruption. I mean, corruption is a massive problem that we've got here in the UK. It's absolutely rife from every single public sector to government. You know, there's just corruption, and it's all drinks for the boys, and that has to stop. You know, there has to be full accountability. You know, the British public, you know, they deserve the right to be able to hold their MPs to account.
Of course. That's the only way you're going to implement change, is if these...
But that's democracy.
Yeah. Well, we've got a lot of... Herd Immunity News has thousands of our followers, fantastic people who have given up completely on the democratic process, because they believe no matter who you vote for, the government always gets in. The civil service in this country are a disgrace. They have no interest in implementing Brexit, for example. They are only interested in having unfettered mass illegal immigration. They're not picking up the bill. As we've seen recently, there are thousands of them on six-figure salaries that they would never last in the private sector. No chance. If you or I were employing them, they'd be out the door. They'd be lucky if they're cleaning the cars and the trucks, wouldn't they? Really, at their track record. So I think the Reform have an amazing chance. They have a fantastic opportunity to do really well, but things are pretty tough, and they've got their work cut out for them.
We've definitely got our work cut out for us, 100%. I mean, you know, you just alluded there, you know, to the civil service. I mean, you know, it's really there on the branding, isn't it? You know, civil servants, they're servants. That's what they are supposed to be. Since when have the civil service gained so much power? I mean, what we're doing at the moment, we're currently seeing a very weak and spineless government. We've got no leadership whatsoever in the ranks of Westminster. The opposition aren't really offering much as opposition. So really and truly, as I said earlier, we have a two-tier political system of socialism. We just have red socialists and we just have blue socialists. And socialism is great until you run out of everybody else's money, which is what's happening now.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? Somebody's got to pay for all of this. It sounds fantastic in an ideal world, in some sort of utopian existence where there's a money tree and you can go down the back of the couch and find 500 billion like Rishi Sunak did during the lockdown, which is complete insanity. And recently, Sunak has U-turned 3 times in 1 week. He's U-turned on the gender recognition bill and what children will be taught in schools regarding their gender. He's also U-turned on his green issues and his green policy. He's committed to net zero. And let's not forget that ULEZ is born out of the net zero argument. This comes from European Union diktats, which we are still a part of. And then he's signed us up to another alliance, again, in the scientific community, which keeps us potentially next to the World Health Organization's treaty in the light of a new pandemic, as and when that happens. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, you know, I would certainly say, you know, with the Northern Ireland deal, you know, I would certainly say with the current deal that he's just done with Europe, it's just opening up the back door for us to go back into Europe. You know, if Labour are voted in the next general election, I'm pretty sure that we'll see Keir Starmer running out to Europe, telling everybody how sorry he is that we left the European Union. That is pretty much my thoughts on it. Everything that's happening at the moment is to keep our foot in the door with, you know, the World Health Organization, with Europe. And that's just the way that I see it at the moment.
Yeah, it's quite startling to see that you're either going to get a slow return to European Union regulations, which we do have in Northern Ireland anyway. No, I mean, Northern Ireland is more or less annexed off, as Ben Habib was alluding to. Ben Habib from the Reform Party. Ben Habib, who is the CEO of First Property, he's done some amazing work on Northern Ireland and fighting for Northern Ireland's rights and to become a member of the UK again, because it's still under EU diktats. So at the next general election, anyone who voted for Brexit, it's inconceivable that they would vote for the Conservatives. It really is. Certainly they're not going to vote for Labour, the Lib Dems, or if they're in Scotland, the SNP. There's no chance about that. So the time is right. The time is now. And what a lot of people would like to see is some sort of alliance, some sort of armistice or deals being done between Reclaim and the Heritage Party and UKIP. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, what I was going to say is the issue that we've got is that the mainstream media will not give us any coverage at all. You know, your big media outlets, excuse me, like Sky, like
Channel 4,
ITN,
BBC.
Channel 4, BBC. And as we know, the power of the media has a huge effect on policy regarding, you know, anything from education to crime, whatever it might be. So they're going to keep getting all the airtime. The big challenge that we actually have is the mainstream media.
Yeah. But the thing is that you've noticed that people are noticing, and we are certainly noticing at Herd Immunity News, is that people are switching off the mainstream media and they're coming to channels like ours for information in our own humble way. We are allowing people access to good people like yourself, Howard Cox, Ben Habib, David Curtin from the Heritage Party. We might, you know, we're looking to get people from the alternative parties on, from the centre and right, and even if some lefties want to come on, you know, I don't have a problem with that. It should make for good views. You would. And there's 14 billion still missing from the furlough money that was handed out. Do you remember that? 14 billion still missing, unaccounted for, people who set up bogus businesses and were allowed to extort the British taxpayer of £14 billion. Now, Rishi Sunak wasn't even elected or voted for by the Conservative membership. They rejected him. I mean, this looks completely corrupt and rotten from the outside. I'm sure the Reform Party must be seething about these sort of scurrilous activities in Westminster.
We are, because it's not government's money. Yes, it's not. It's state confiscation. It's not government money. It's our money. Everybody forgets that, Marcus.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely
so. Yeah,
right.
we are seething as a taxpayer. Me as a taxpayer, forget the political side of it, but me as a taxpayer, I'm really annoyed about it. I mean, these bounce back loans that were, you know, just given out willy nilly to anybody. You know, oh, don't worry about it because the British taxpayer will just pick up the bill for it. That is completely unacceptable.
It is. And looking at ULEZ, let's go back to ULEZ for a little while, because you are seeing civil disobedience now. Certainly a group that I'm covering pretty closely are a group calling themselves the Blade Runners. Now, this movement we first reported on at Herd Immunity News from our insiders in the Kent area. And they spoke of this group who were actually taking matters into their own hands. Now, neither you or I can condone publicly any criminality for the record. We can't do it. However, as we've said before, we understand what is driving these people to take such measures. No.
We understand, definitely, we understand their motives. Of course we do. You know, and the way that the Blade Runners see it is that they're sticking up for the vulnerable people of society. That's the way that they see it, and that's their justification for doing it.
Incredibly so. And I don't know if you read in the news recently, but there's a ULEZ camera placed next to a hospital in Greater London. And I'm not going to... Well, that's it. Yes. And the fact that people who are dying or needing essential treatment to try and have a shred of hope, the fact that they're being stressed to the max from these fines, it's beyond heartless, no. It really is. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts on it, when you're going for cancer treatment, are you actually going to be worried about a ULEZ? You know, you've just had chemotherapy
Yeah.
You know, your body is being subjected to some really horrific stuff,
Mm.
you know, and you now have to worry about the ULEZ. I mean, they're saying that they're going to refund it to cancer patients. They won't even refund me my money.
No,
So do you think that they're going to refund money to cancer patients?
I doubt it.
I doubt it very much. I can't see that happening. And I've got to be honest with you, Marcus, I don't
Yeah.
believe a word of it.
No, I think it's just for the press. TFL will give it a press statement and they'll just say, "Oh, we're looking into it. We're going to refund it." But a lot of these people won't be alive when the refunds come, if they ever
No.
come. You know, they're talking about you're talking years before people are able to claim. I mean, you're still chasing £4,000 roughly in
It's
legal
roughly about,
expenses.
yeah,
Or
roughly about £4,000 now.
now, what is that? If you don't mind me asking, what is that um, bill for the £4,000?
So that was the auto pay system.
Right. That takes us back to the auto pay system. And that's a system that my contention with that is that when people sign up to that, they are making a rod for their own back because they're going to get fined regardless. They're going to get charged regardless whether they're on the system or whether they're not on the system because the system doesn't work. The rules are there are no rules. There have been countless times I listen to Talk TV a lot. Mike Graham, good man. And he's always got people on the show telling him and the listeners and viewers that they've been fined by TFL, but their cars are compliant. And all they're told to do is contact TFL and the money will be coming a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later. It's a complete joke. It's a sick joke, to be honest with you. And it's something that the people aren't going to put up with anymore. Let's see what happens up in Scotland. Let's see if the Scots take it. I think they will. I don't think there'll be a Blade Runner movement up here. No way, because they're very compliant people. You saw that during the lockdowns. They were all wearing their masks, no? They were all sitting in their houses, measuring and distance between each other. I wasn't, of course. You know, I was doing my own thing and following my conscience, and I'm happy to go on record and say that. I think it was a disgrace. What were your thoughts on the lockdowns?
Well, whether it's lockdowns or anything else, I think everything in life is a choice.
You'll make a good politician, sir.
Thank you. But that's what I believe, that everything is a choice. And I would certainly suggest that, look, I'm not medically qualified, you know, and I don't want to give like a medical opinion. The only thing that I can say is that Reform are absolutely opposed to any lockdowns.
Yes.
You know, if there was a major health pandemic or that, you know, there was a very dangerous virus or something like that, then what I would say is that there needs to be a lot of discussion around this, because we have actually seen the fallout now of what happens when you lock a country down. I'm not sure if the United Kingdom and the rest of the world will ever recover from this. And all I've seen since these lockdowns, I don't even like to call them really lockdowns, because for me, they were just like restrictions. What I did see was a lot of businesses getting absolutely hammered through the pandemic. But then also what I did see was a bit of COVID camp. You know, everybody was just out because it was quite hot. Everybody was out, you know, with ice creams and, you know, all that sort of stuff, when, you know, you were supposed to be following government guidelines. So it's all a bit of a joke, really. The whole of the pandemic was.
Well, the people who were making the rules were breaking the rules. You and I aren't doctors, but neither's Nicola Sturgeon, neither's Keir Starmer, neither's Boris Johnson, neither's Matt Hancock. None of these people are doctors, and all of these people were enjoying themselves, while everybody else was unable to go and visit their families, go to funerals, visit dying loved ones. It was an utter disgrace, and to many people, it's the crime of the century. No, I mean, I'm not going to let you walk down that road, but doesn't it shock and disgust you to see that the people who were making all these rules and telling people to stay home, people like Matt Hancock and Professor Neil Ferguson, they were actually having affairs. They were having it away with somebody else's missus. That must disgust you.
It does. It deeply disgusts me, and it deeply discusses Reform as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, obviously Isabel Oakeshott when she was writing the book
Yes.
with Matt Hancock. I think she was that inflamed and that disgusted by, what she was reading and what she was seeing, that she actually felt that it was in, the public interest that we were all made aware of these messages, these text messages. And it really does trouble me that the lawmakers are breaking their own laws. And that's what I was getting at earlier. With TfL, they expect you to follow their court orders. The government expects you to behave a certain way, yet they're not behaving a certain way. And since when has that become acceptable in society? Yes, there's a lot of question marks around the money over COVID. There's a lot of question marks regarding all of the contracts, the PPE contracts and drinks for the boys and all that sort of stuff. And when these contracts were given out, the National Audit Office were denied access to see, what process had actually been followed, the criteria, in terms of tendering for contracts and stuff.
Yeah, look, what's happened now is a lot of people are saying, no, that the social contract between the government and those who are governed is broken. You have a police service that's 95% ineffectual. And we've spoken about this in London with the Reform mayoral candidate, Howard Cox, who told us 95% of the Met are sitting behind desks. Subsequently, 95% of crimes in London go unresolved. I mean, this isn't rocket science. They need to be out and about. I know he's talked about trebling the number of bobbies on the beat, but that should be a given. Sadiq Khan has made a complete mess of London. It's a laughingstock now. Economically, people will never go back there again if they don't have compliant vehicles. They're not interested. You live there. You see it for yourself. It isn't what it once was. And when you have acts or deeds, as some people call them, taking place where people are retiring, cutting down devices which will bankrupt some people, no. If these ULEZ schemes are allowed to scam people out of money based on flawed science, which has been debunked completely, if they can get away with that, they can get away with anything. Do you see the logic in that?
Absolutely. The thing is with the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, he talks all the time about the 4,000 children's lives.
Yes, he does.
That he's going to save by
Imperial College London report.
Yeah. But what deeply troubles me is, why is he not so concerned about all the young boys who are stabbing each other on the streets of London? Why is he not concerned about them?
Well, he doesn't care.
No, he doesn't care because he can't get money from them.
That's it. If he cared about it, he would encourage stop and search, surely, to goodness, wouldn't he? He wouldn't say it was racism. I mean, what does he expect the police to do? If you get a description and you're looking for 4 black youths, are you going to say, oh, because that's racist, I'm going to look for 4 red-headed Scottish types with white skin? No, you're not going to do it, are you? Nonsense.
Well, I mean, the days of the RA, when you remember, the days of the RA.
I was there.
Predominantly, well, exactly. Back then the police weren't stopping Egyptian men, were they?
No, that's right.
They weren't. And is it racial profiling? I don't know. Or I don't know if it is racial profiling, or is it the fact that the police are doing their job?
Yeah, it's good police work.
The police doing their job. I think it's good police work.
Yeah. You get a description of someone and they're 6'5" and black, wearing a pink Nike top. You're not going to go for someone who's 5 foot tall and built like a brick privy, is 5 foot by 5 foot. It's just nonsense.
Exactly. It's good police work.
Yeah. And then you get Diane Abbott or Lammy on television screaming at the top of their lungs, this is racism. And I think that that's all kind of gone now. People have used that trick far too often. They used it with UKIP, didn't they? They used it with the Brexit Party. And it's played itself out, I think.
I think definitely you're right. You've made a valid point there. I think that the British public are bored of it now.
Yeah.
They see beyond it. There's nothing that Reform have said that's racist. There's nothing that Nigel Farage has said that's racist. And I think people really do see that now. Because when people do say, you know, well, you've got racist views or whatever it might be, what is it that we've actually said that's racist? What, wanting to protect our borders? That's not racist. That's doing the right thing. That's protecting your people. So how is that racist?
Well, you're protecting people of all colours, aren't you? You're protecting people of all religions and creeds. I'm sure what always gets me is that people who have fled from other countries that didn't have any border security to live here, they're the last people that want to see more of what they've ran away from, surely to goodness.
I mean, I think with the civil service, what an elected government, a new elected government with innovative ideas would have to do is certainly carry out a review of the civil servants' contracts.
Well, we surrendered Northern Ireland, no.
We've
surrendered that without a bullet fired. That's gone. And there are already talks of Gibraltar having shared sovereignty with the Spanish. They've more or less taken over. That's my fear, and that's a lot of people's fears, is without a border, you don't have a country.
Exactly. And now we're actually seeing that, aren't we?
Yes.
We've got no borders here, so we haven't got anything else, have we?
No. I mean, the Blade Runners can't go down to the border as well.
If we can't protect our own islands, how are we going to protect Gibraltar? How are we going to protect Northern Ireland?
That is a huge worry for people, honestly. Like, all joking aside, they see their towns and little rural communities changing beyond recognition. This is not about colour. This is not about ethnicity. This is about capacity. And on our current trajectory, I don't want to sound alarmist, but the white British population of this country will be replaced by 2050. We will no longer be a majority white country. That is very alarming, because you can't see the Chinese, the Africans, the Pakistans, the Indians voting for this themselves. And it's not happening there. It's happening here.
I don't know what has been so wrong with our country. I don't know what is so wrong with it. You know, we could sit here all night for the rest of the week trying to sort this one out. And I don't think we'd ever, be able to put our finger on what it actually is. But the only thing that I can only ever say is what is so wrong with this country. You know, when I see people on GB News, who are, who are just slagging this country off.
Yes.
And they religiously do it. Constantly just slagging this country off, that we did this and we did that, and we, and the royal family and the king and this and that. I mean, if you hate this country so much, why are you here?
Yeah, I'll take you to the airport if you like.
Well, if I hated something, it's like I don't like fish, so I don't eat it.
Just as well, because we gave over fishing rights to the EU.
Yeah. But, do you like the comparisons that I've just drawn there? I don't like fish, so I just don't eat it. I stay away from it.
Sure.
And it's, if you hate the United Kingdom as much as you hate it, and you can't forgive us for all the things that we're meant to have done in the past, then why are you here? And I mean that in the nicest possible way. Of
course. Well, you don't want them to suffer anymore, Noel. That's very kind and compassionate of you.
Yes. It saddens me, when I see them getting so irate about things, and the shouting and the screaming, and I'm just like, why are you shouting and screaming?
Yeah. It is quite
a normal conversation, like both you and I are having tonight. We're just having a normal discussion. We're talking about a whole host of different topics.
Yeah.
And, that's what democracy is all about. Having a discussion about everything. You have views on things. I have views on things.
Sure.
I might like a film. I might like the style of a film. I might like the actors on that, but you might not like it.
Yeah, that's right. You have to come to a common denominator, and the common denominator should be the progress or the prosperity of the country, its security, safety, just the basics, the education systems, health service, all these type of things. In the last few minutes, Noel, in the news recently, we saw the last night of the proms, a fantastic pageantry of Britishness where we can celebrate great composers like Benjamin Britten and Elgar. Sadly, a couple of nights ago, instead of watching beautiful Union Jacks flying all over the Albert Hall in London, we were confronted with the sight of the EU flag draped everywhere, being waved. How did that make you feel?
Personally, I didn't see it. I have to be honest with you.
That's a blessing.
I didn't see it. And by the sounds of it, I'm really glad that I didn't see it. By what you've just said to me, I'm really glad that I didn't see it, because it would have infuriated me. You know, we're not part of Europe. Why is there European flags? You know, when you hear all the Ramonas and all the Remainers who bang on and bang on and bang on about being Europe, we're not Europeans. We're British, and we're proud of it. I'm proud of it.
100%. Yeah, well, exactly. We're in Europe, but we're not in the EU.
Exactly. But we're not Europeans. We're British.
Yeah, well,
and that is one of the reasons why I voted to leave the European Union. Was all about sovereignty. Yes, it was borders, of course it was, but I couldn't understand why we have elected officials here and then we have non-elected officials in Europe who are telling us how to live our lives.
That's right.
I couldn't understand that.
Well, that's the communist dream, isn't it? That's the Marxist dream. That's what we had during lockdown. We had unelected sage who were all left-leaning, let's be polite. Some of them, actually, the lady who came up with the vaccines are a member of the Communist Party. These people were not interested in anything to do with British sovereignty, and they ran a technocracy. But listen, what we'll do is we'll thank you for coming on this evening. The next time you come on the show, there's going to be some very significant news to share with us, we believe.
Yes.
So we'll keep our herd immunity viewers on tenterhooks till then. But let me just say, Mr. Noel Willcox, thank you very much for appearing on Herd Immunity News.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. And to get to know me, the man who broke the story, that's also, that's also very big. Hopefully your viewers have kind of had a bit of an insight into Noel Willcox.
Yeah, exactly.
A bit about the form.
That's what it's all about. And we will leave all the links to how people can get in touch with you, how people can get in touch with Reform. We'll leave them all after this video. Anyway, thank you so much, Noel. You take care. Cheers.
Thanks, Marcus.